well, it got a major drubbing after Operation Sindoor. 9 of Pakistani air bases completely demolished by India's indigenous weapons and their superiority on full display. What was Pakistan using? It was using the Chinese weaponry. So what is it now planning to do after Operation Sindoor? Though it's still on, but after Operation Sindoor's defeat, well, it goes to China, doesn't it? So that's what the Pakistani foreign minister is doing. He's off to China. Who knows what for? Maybe to get more of those weapons, well, which have been defeated very significantly by India. But what could be the larger implications of this, given the fact that it opens, of course, another possibility that we've been in India have been saying for a while in terms of the collusion between Pakistan and China. More importantly, the messaging that Pakistan is trying to send by going for its first foreign visit to China and, of course, looking at a tripartite meeting, trilateral meeting between between Pakistan, Afghanistan and China. Ramifications of that, the impact of that is something that we will decode. But first up, I want to get in my colleague Shivaru to understand from him the optics that are at play here and what is it that we should now be watching out for. Shiv.
Well, the optics are actually quite terrible for Pakistan, Gaurie, because Ishaq Dar, who is the foreign minister of that country, as well as the deputy prime minister, has had an especially rough week. Not only has his country, been at the receiving end of, a historic military operation by India in a non-war scenario, where virtually their entire military had been paralyzed and they had to come to the ceasefire table. It's also Ishaq Dar, who was a victim of a huge amount of fake news peddling in Pakistan's parliament. So he's been exposed to be a little bit of a motor mouth, a little bit of a cartoonish character here, who is the deputy prime minister of that country. And as protocol demands between, a master state and a vassal state, he has been summoned to China for briefings and to provide information as to how, India was able to pin Pakistan down so convincingly and so persuasively in such a short time, in just a matter of, a few hours and days. Remember that China has a lot to worry about in this stance because, war is a serious business. Weapons are always to be taken seriously. But there is, very significant reason to believe that Chinese weapons mostly performed suboptimally in Operation Sindoor, as a result of which Pakistan was not able to put up a credible defense to the Indian offensives. So that's another, piece of conversation that will have to be had between China and Pakistan. But overall, I think both China and Pakistan will have to be trying to figure out what the next dynamic is. Because let's be clear about one thing, Gaurie, and you know this better, being a China expert yourself, that this ceasefire couldn't have happened without Chinese blessings. Pakistan's, military offensive against India, against population centers, couldn't have happened without some kind of facilitation by China. They used Chinese drones, Chinese missiles, Chinese air defense systems, Chinese aircraft, Chinese artillery in Kupwara, where I reported from. And therefore, China has a lot to answer for as well, given that it was these instruments of defense that were used to target civilian centers here in India. So India will, of course, be looking very closely at this relationship between China and Pakistan. But let's make no mistake, the rules of engagement have changed. And there are real implications for China as well. And I think this meeting between Ishaq Dar and his counterpart in China, Wang Yi, will hopefully reveal more.
Absolutely, Shiv, we leave it there. Really appreciate you joining us live on India Global with that perspective. At the end of the day, those big questions that we are putting forth to our guests, it is about the arms, the funding, the strategic message, and that's exactly what we are putting out. First up, will there be more arms that China will provide to Pakistan? It did so, it backfired, but will that gravy chain continue? At what cost? That's the first question. Next up, we are asking, what about the funding? Again, China has been bankrolling a large part of the Pakistani economy. It's a separate discussion as to who is really siphoning off, whether it's going to the generals or the economy. But the fact is, will that gravy chain also continue, or could that see a change? Next, the messaging in terms of saying that China is the first visit of the Deputy Prime Minister after Operation Sindoor that India conducted. What is the messaging there? particularly for New Delhi? And last up, the question that we are putting forth, the collusion, the China-Pakistan collusion from a military side, from a economic side, and of course from a strategic point of view. Veena Sikri, former ambassador, and Brahma Chellaney, strategic affairs expert, joins me live on these aspects of a story that we need to keep a very close watch on. And Mr. Chellaney, let me start with you. The fact is, the optics are on full display. And also, of course, Pakistan would like to take back home something after that drubbing it received from India. But what, according to you, could be the most important takeaway that New Delhi should be keeping a very close watch on as this meeting unfolds?
The Sino-Pakistan strategic nexus is a long-standing nexus that imposes high costs on India, because there's no other country in the world that is wedged between two nuclear-armed revisionist states. Both China and Pakistan are revisionist states in relation to India. Each lays claim to sizable swaths of Indian territory, and both work together in seeking to contain and tie down India. So for China in particular, Pakistan is a very cost-effective way to contain India. And that's the reason why over the years, China has even transferred nuclear weapon designs and complete missile systems to Pakistan. In fact, after the Pahalgam massacre, China rushed new weapon systems to Pakistan, including air-to-air missile systems that Pakistan used when India launched Operation Sindoor. So in a way, Pakistan was indirectly involved in Pakistan's military campaign against India. And Ishaq Dar's visit to Beijing is essentially a thank you visit where he will pay obeisance to China. And the Chinese Foreign Ministry today in a briefing said that it reiterated that Pakistan is China's all-weather strategic friend,
yes,
and that China is ready to work with Pakistan to further strengthen the close ties between the two countries. So it's clear,
yes,
that despite India's efforts over the years to break this nexus between China and Pakistan, that nexus has only strengthened.
Mm-hmm. That nexus has strengthened. We need to watch out for the collusion. Where will it play out, whether in geopolitics, whether in the military domain, given the fact that how it unfolded last month, and of course in terms of the economic partnership as well. But Veena Sikri, come in there. What is it? What is the kind of commentary that you would be watching out for when this meeting ends?
Well, let me say first of all that Pakistan must be extremely embarrassed, and so must China be, because of the poor performance of the weaponry, the missiles, the air defense systems supplied by China to Pakistan. I think this is a matter of great commentary, not only within
Pakistan
India,
could be embarrassed, but it could also be the Chinese defense companies who would be going back to the drawing board that they are getting defeated by Indian indigenous weaponry.
Absolutely, and we know that their stocks have absolutely taken a nosedive,
yes,
the Chinese defense companies, after this. And the way in which the duds, we know that in Punjab and Jammu and Kashmir, duds, unexploded missiles sent by Pakistan, obviously of Chinese origin, have landed and are now in Indian hands, and which will give us a good intake into what these missiles are all about. I think this is a great embarrassment, both for China and for Pakistan. And India's superior performance, India's superiority in overcoming all these, support that China is giving to Pakistan, and establishing our own superiority with the Akash Theed, with the BrahMos missiles, with the S-400s. I think this has been a great victory for India, and this is something that will definitely be on discussion, number one. Number two, I think Pakistan has been greatly embarrassed by the support that Afghanistan has extended to India at the time of the Pahalgam, immediately after the Pahalgam attack on innocent tourists. And this has been a great blow for Pakistan. And now China, with its great influence in Afghanistan, has forced the acting foreign minister of Afghanistan, Mutaki, to come to Beijing at this time and have a trilateral meeting between Pakistan, Afghanistan and China. Obviously, China will try and pressurize Afghanistan into towing the Pakistan line and to being more amenable to Pakistan's influence and listening to what they have to say. Let us see how that meeting comes about, because we do know that our foreign minister had a discussion with officiating, with acting foreign minister Mutaki, at this time in recent days. So I think these are two very, very important points that we will be watching. I think the global embarrassment that China has suffered because of the poor performance of weaponry, the great misinformation that Pakistan tried to launch. Its defense minister was caught saying that.
But make no mistake that whatever Pakistan did during Operation Sindoor that India launched was in complete connivance with China, or at least they kept China completely in the loop all throughout. So this could also be exchanging notes, deciding their next course of action, and of course also the whole Pakistani propaganda that Islamabad launched, how it got busted and what their next steps should be. Brahma Chellaney.
You're absolutely right, Gaurie. The Pakistanis dependent on Chinese critical technologies, including satellite reconnaissance, to target Indian sites. That was the extent of the Sino-Pakistan nexus when India launched Operation Sindoor. In any war or any armed conflict, whether it's even a limited operation, when weapons are used, the supplier nation learns from the use of these weapons. If Pakistan's air defenses were found wanting because Chinese air defense systems didn't work as Pakistan had anticipated, it will give China now the opportunity to improve on those air defense systems. So China will certainly learn whatever it wishes to learn from the performance of Chinese weapon systems during India's Operation Sindoor. The important point, as you underscore, is that this collusion between China and Pakistan, that collusion is now pretty strong and poses a potent threat to India. Unfortunately, we are still struggling as to how we can deal with this nexus. We have tried to befriend China now and then, failed. Again, we have sought to rebuild ties with China. But the fact is that China and Pakistan, as China says, are ironclad brothers. Breaking that nexus will be almost impossible for India. So India will have to deal with this reality. It will have to factor in this collusion in its defense planning and strategic thinking.
All right. Veena Sikri, you want to come in there? I also want to add the bit about the India-China relationship. Remember, all this is happening at a time when there have been tentative but forward movements that have been made in the India-China relationship as well. That thaw has come in, that forward movement has come in. How do you see that getting impacted with its very overt backing of Pakistan and this trip also coming in?
Well, I think that's a big, eye-opener for India. We always knew that 82% of Pakistan's defense supplies came from China, and China had been calling them the all-weather friend, higher than the mountains, deeper than the seas, and so on. But still, the fact that China was so closely involved with the attacks on India by Pakistan, of course, they failed spectacularly, but still that they were so closely involved is a very worrisome aspect. And China also is interested in the Indian market because their economy is weakening, failing. They are worried about the Trump tariffs, but now in the light of, is there going to be a possible US-China, agreement, trade, write-off, whatever, that's all to be watched. But still, all said and done, the India market is important for China. So India will be watching it very carefully, what is happening there. And India is prepared to have a even-handed relationship with China, but certainly attempts like what has happened in Pakistan, the Chinese support for them, is something that we will have to call China out on, I think, very clearly, because this is not in their interest, certainly.
All right, we leave it there. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining me on India Global on a story that has many dimensions and implications for India. And in fact, which is why, viewers, the bottom line really here is that there are three very important aspects that I want to highlight. First, China is rattled. It never thought that its weaponry will be completely demolished by Indian indigenous weaponry. That's happened. So they realize that if at all if they want any escalation, if China wants any escalation on Arunachal or any of the other side, then India can respond. It has responded. The template is there. They can do it once again, and that has rattled China. The second thing is, China backed Pakistan all through the entire Operation Sindoor that India launched. Everything that Pakistan did was in cahoots with China, and look how it backfired. Whether it's the global narrative supporting India, whether it's Pakistani propaganda being busted, or the fact that, as I said, its 9 air bases being completely demolished by India. That has hurt China. That is something that they're going to discuss in that meeting. And lastly, they will send out a very clear message that they would want to back this relationship further. It's up to India now to decide how it views the India-China relationship at a time when the global order is looking the way it is.